Hello? Hello? Please, I know you can hear us. We are trapped here in the spaces between worlds. It is a wonderful yet terrifying place, and only our voices escape. You can help us. You can let us in before we go mad.
What Remains on the Planet of Graves by Curtiss Christensen. Did you see it? The quarantine zone is clear. The Texamorphs dissolved all at once, said GildeMar telepathically. I regarded him with contempt. His forearms crossed over his wide cephalothorax, but there were no weapons fastened to his abdomen. He lounged casually on his 6 legs. His alabaster skin was bereft of armor. Of course I saw it. I've been watching since the wall was erected. You're not supposed to be up here without gear, GildeMar, I chastised, tapping the tip of my beam pistol over the surface of my heavy plate armor. GildeMar's pink perceptor puckered in response. It's over, VerDen. Our fleet was successful. They killed the source of the Texamorphs. I don't think the regulations are valid anymore. And how do you know that this isn't just another ploy? The Texamorphs are clever. They've managed to take biomass from us despite our defenses. They've prevented us from discovering how to use their transportation node. They've breached the Grand Rampart time and time again. This could be another trick. You should be armed and shielded, I replied. Are you serious? For the first time in a decade, nothing has attacked the wall. Nothing has eaten away at our defenses. No one has died to be liquefied into more fuel for the Texamorph threat. We are finally rid of them. Relax, VerDen. We can rest now. You can rest. I wish I could be so optimistic, but until the fleet returns, I and the guard must maintain our vigil, I replied with finality. I turned back to the barren land of the quarantine zone, pondering whether the nightmare was truly over, and if life would ever return from the desolation that the Texamorphs had wrought. Can Turcumet ever return to its former lush glory? About that, continued GildeMar, walking up beside me. He tapped his 10 fingers across the metal railing nervously. About what? I snapped back. The tapping stopped. The fleet, of course, responded GildeMar. My perceptor widened in aggravation. Fine, about your lifemate, VerShyk, he said. My guild is nearing completion on another ship. The propulsion system is experimental, but theoretically it should be able to make the trip in half the time it took the fleet. The Council is hesitant. Furthermore, the fleet is probably on its way back. Sending a scout ship is likely a waste of resources, and we've precious few to spare. Resources? VerShyk is out there. We wouldn't even be alive if it weren't for her research. We wouldn't even know what the Texamorphs are. She's a scientist. She doesn't belong out there. She should be here, figuring out how to return life to the quarantine zone. And she would. Resources? She's the resource we need. My cry was strong enough that a few of the nearby guards shifted uncomfortably. And that is your unbiased opinion? Asked GildeMar. Obviously I'm biased. She's my lifemate, but it still holds true. Her mind is more valuable to us than any mineral or fuel. Good. We're going forward with or without approval. Council be damned, and I want you on that ship. What if the Council refuses? I asked. The question should be, what are they going to do about it? This is the only space-worthy vessel left on Myuln. When do we set off? Shouldn't be more than a week. I'll come get you when it's time. I finished my shift, removed my armor, and sauntered home. This is supposed to be our home, VerShyk, I thought on the intimate mental pathway meant for me and her alone. I knew she couldn't hear, but I shouted to the heavens anyway, as if I believed my loneliness could shatter the barrier of space to find her. I imagined VerShyk chastising me for abandoning my post. I walked into the hatchery that had been completed just before the fleet had taken her from me. Look at what we were to build. I'm not abandoning my post. I'm finding a new one. The only station in life I'll accept is one by your side, rearing our hatchlings. You're my lifemate. I entered the study and settled on my haunches near the computer. I inserted my silver ring and pulled up VerShyk's science logs from when she first encountered the Texamorphs. I wasn't keen on listening to the horror she experienced, but it was the only record I had. I just wanted to hear her thoughts again.
Log 1. Science Lead VerShyk reporting here. Sorry if that sounds weird. I'm not used to this new thought-based data log technique, so bear with me. The expeditionary team found something exciting in the unexplored regions of the Turcomet jungle. A new life form. As of now, we're unsure if it's native or not. They say that it is a translucent being, perhaps an unknown form of cave-dwelling troglodyte. I'm heading out there day after tomorrow. Hopefully we'll be able to catalog its behavior and classification. Log 2. This is unprecedented. Oh, sorry. Science Lead VerShyk reporting in. We found something bizarre in the deep jungle. It took the team ages to cut our way through the red brush. It seemed like the jungle ate the path behind us as we moved toward the location of the sightings. Such a healthy ecosystem that we are forcing our way into. We set up a makeshift camp near where the first expeditionary team had found the creature. So far, so good. I rested and then instructed the science team to set up observation posts in a grid around the location of the first sighting. I set up my own tree stand and sat several uneventful days in it. It was the 5th that I finally saw it. A rotund tumble of translucent tentacles. It grabbed at animals and vegetation without discrimination. When it had gathered all that it could muster to carry, it dragged everything away into the distance. These new things are indiscriminate scavengers. Everything living is food. I didn't have a chance to see it consume its meal, but I hope that tomorrow holds another glimpse into the life cycle of this bizarre animal. I've decided to name them Omni-Schizon. We'll see if the name sticks once we learn more. Log 3. Science Team Lead VerShyk reporting. We are closing in on the burrow of these new creatures, if they indeed burrow. I had everyone move their post closer to where we saw them retreat to. There were more than I expected. VerDen, Myuln, and Trimtoe all saw the creatures. We have concluded that they are indeed of clear composition, but purple, green, red, and blue organs sit in their internals. We constricted our circle around the location we assumed they were coming from. As I sat in my stand, a cry rose from the opposite side of the circle. It sounded like Trimtoe. I struggled against the urge to rush to his aid. Numerous tentacled beings ripped away at the flora and fauna beneath me. I watched as they grasped organic matter and retreated into darkness. The Omni-Schizon appetite seems ruthless. The jungle is starting to suffer. Bare dirt covers the ground where before thick brush choked the soil between trees. Trimtoe failed to show up at camp that night. The harsh jungle has probably claimed him. The jungle predators are ruthless, and a tree trunk proves a minimal barrier between them and the meal at its top. Hopefully we can find the body to bring back to his family. I sent a team of some of the more seasoned jungle explorers to find what happened to Trimtoe. I set out with my own team to rig up bioscanners as closely to the burrow as we dared, hoping we wouldn't disturb their natural patterns. Log 4. They're not from here. I had my suspicions, but the scans proved it. Not only that, they're hostile. Our camp was overrun. The Omniskizens attacked the armed guards first. Those that weren't dragged away swiftly decomposed into a viscous clear liquid. I have taken samples to study in my lab, but I am starting to think we may not make it back. Oh, right, the scans. The Omniskizens are unlike any living thing I've ever seen. They're composed of what appears to be complex viruses. I'm not even sure how they function as an organism. That isn't all. The internal organs serve normal biological functions, but their metabolism is slow. There should be no reason for them to eat as much as they do. Moreover, they are connected to each other somehow. It's not like our own telepathy. They are intertwined into a network. I'm not sure what to make of this information, other than knowing that they are not of Myuln. The Omniskizens are invaders. Log 5. Science Team Lead VerShyk reporting. We've retreated beyond where they operate. The more they take, the stronger they get. We're down to half a dozen. VerDen got hit on the arm by one of the Omniskizens. We figured it was a flesh wound. I gave him basic medical aid before we continued. I should have checked better. I should have known. Why didn't he tell me? A new form has emerged. These creatures are hunting us and attack when the opportunity arises. They are larger and faster. Their elongated body is pointed at either end, but flares at the rear. It runs on 5 legs, 2 on the sides and 1 holding up its back end. Thin, offensive tentacles droop from its belly, and sensory antennae dot its back seemingly at random. I figure Venator is a fitting name for these new things. I have equipped the remaining scanners and set them to an active scan. Hopefully I can gather more data for whoever finds what is left of us. Log 6. VerShyk. We fought off the beings and made it despite my pessimism. I know what to classify the creatures as now. They are texamorphs. They alter our very genetics to their own. I almost didn't make it. The last of the warriors. I call them that because that is what they became. Sacrificed themselves to give us a chance. One of them threw me his blade as a Venator dug its way through his chest. I wish I knew his name. The Omniskizens flooded in past our dying companions. I fled. Merquin's cry of agony stopped me in my tracks. I turned back. One of the Omniskizens latched itself to his back hip. This is when I too became a warrior. I carved my way clumsily through the masses of clear beings. Despite my lack of experience with a sword, I managed to kill without getting injured. Orange fluid sprayed from melting corpses. I had to hack off Merquin's rear quarter. I doubted that he would be able to continue, but somehow that tough old scientist managed to plod along on 4 legs. I won't lie, I thought about leaving him behind. I'm only Myuln after all. He was slowing me down. I still wanted to live. I quelled the intrusive, selfish thoughts and continued fighting and cutting through the jungle. I'm not sure how we got out. The whole thing is just a blur of translucent tentacles, orange liquid, and red undergrowth. Eventually, the city spires appeared on the horizon. We need to stop these things. This is a threat to our very existence. I theorize that the texamorphs are exponential and innumerable, crafty and insidious. We need to stop them while we still can. This is not a new life form. This is a disease.
VerDen! VerDen! Cried GildeMar from outside my domicile. I roused from slumber. I stood up from beside the computer. GildeMar, we may be associates, but I can only stand your presence once a day, I replied. Oh, hush. You adore me. Now get out here. It's time. I thought you said a week. I'm trying to sleep, I said as I dazedly wandered toward the entry. Things have accelerated. We need to go. Now! Shouted GildeMar. His yell woke a few of the neighbors. I heard them mumbling about the noise. Quiet down. I'm coming, I said. I disarmed the security system and let GildeMar in. Get whatever creature comforts you need for the voyage. We should leave immediately. They can't be far behind, he said. What are you talking about? I asked. The Council. I wasn't completely honest with you earlier. They were adamantly against the ship. I built it anyway. I thought maybe they would come around to my way of thinking. They didn't. The Order is after me. The ship is complete. We need to move fast if we're ever going to get off Myuln. I didn't even respond. I ran back to my computer, downloaded the entire set of VerShyk's logs, and returned to GildeMar. What did you even get? He asked. Everything I need, I responded. Let's get out of here. Shame. I figured you'd have a loose bottle of Durinth to share on the journey. Who says I'd share? I jibed. He huffed and motioned me to follow. GildeMar led me through a hodgepodge series of alleys. The echoing of our footfalls pattered incessantly over the metallic walk. The noise was a quiet one, but I self-consciously spread my toes to dampen it. I looked past GildeMar, wondering when we would reach our destination. Something darted out of view around the corner. I caught GildeMar by the arm and stopped him. What's the matter, VerDen? He whispered. An arm poked into the alleyway. I tackled GildeMar as a sizzling bolt of white shot over us. I scrambled to my feet and pulled GildeMar into cover behind an adjacent wall. VerDen! GildeMar! The Council needs to speak with you, shouted the Order Keeper. Is that why you're shooting at us? I asked. You know this caster isn't lethal, but it does hurt. Now come out slowly, and I won't have to use it. I looked for an escape. The alley we had ducked down ran into a dead end. We could try back the way we came, but the Keeper no doubt had his pistol trained and waiting to disrupt our nervous systems. I turned my gaze up to a series of balconies running above the walkway. I motioned GildeMar to move closer. When he was underneath the low-hanging balcony, I hopped up and climbed his shoulders like a ladder. VerDen, what are you doing? He cried in protest. Hush, I replied. Yeah, VerDen, what are you doing? Nothing mischievous, I presume, jeered the Keeper. I hoisted my heft over the railing. Stretching out, I could just reach the next. I carefully pulled myself over balcony after balcony until I was nearly on top of the Keeper. He wore his Order's traditional silver armor. Ornate etchings covered the armor. Black dyed skin lay underneath. He held the caster in his bottom left hand. I'm losing patience here. Get out of there now or I'll zap you just for the fun of it, growled the Keeper. He stepped directly beneath me. I dropped onto his back and grabbed his weapon arm. I applied pressure with both of my left hands. The bones snapped. His arm went limp. The gun dropped. He shrieked shrilly. I swung around his abdomen and jammed 3 fingers into the gap in the front of his armor. The scream died immediately as the Keeper lost consciousness. I snagged the caster off the ground. GildeMar, it's safe to come out, I said. He came around the corner and stopped at the sight of the Order Keeper. Is he dead? Asked GildeMar. No, I'm a fighter, not an animal. He's unconscious. We need to move. There could be more, and this one will wake up soon. I'm surprised he was alone, especially given your reputation. He didn't stand. White struck the wall beside me. Sparks cascaded off the metallic surface. I sidestepped and fired back. My shot bounced off silver armor. It sputtered into nothing in the air. 3 more keepers barred our path. The alley ignited into white energy bolts. I dodged the projectiles. "VerDen, this way!" shouted GildeMar. He waved me down an adjoining walk. I dove through the weapons fire and followed. I turned to backpedal. I aimed at the armor slot of the lead keeper and pressed my ring through the gun's triggering orifice. The white bolt found its mark. The order keeper burst into seizures and collapsed. That's going to hurt tomorrow, I thought as I turned back toward GildeMar. Sparks showered us as we rounded a corner. "They don't know where we're going, right?" I asked. He refused to respond. He just kept running. "GildeMar, they don't know where the ship is, right?" I asked again. "What do you want me to say? I don't know. They're the Order. Who's to say how long they've been keeping tabs on me?" "I want you to tell me if we're walking into an ambush." "Probably. The Council has been against me from the start. Bah, build them an entire fleet of war vessels and they still won't leave me alone." "All right. One more question. Are you okay with being a criminal?" "Aren't we already way past that?" The alleys turned to open street. "I'm not talking about your run-of-the-mill crook. This is treason against the state. We'll be labeled terrorists. We'll be fugitives for the rest of our lives. Myuln will curse our names," I said. Sure. Whatever. I just want this ship to exit the atmosphere at this point. I put so much work into that propulsion system." "Just answer yes or no. You can still surrender and live a fruitful life here. I bet they'll give you 30 years at most in a luxurious cell. I won't hold it against you, but this is something I have to do. VerShyk is out there. I need to get her back." Yes! I'll figure out how to live with it. Who knows? Maybe when we get back, the Council will herald us as heroes. They've always been a finicky bunch. Besides, what will you do if the engines decide to go haywire? I'm the only one qualified to repair them." "Good. Then get in cover. Preferably one that blocks both sides. It's time I teach the keepers what a real fight is like," I finished. GildeMar positioned himself between a house and a decorative planter. I set myself up behind the corner of the alley we had exited. The keeper moved past me. I grabbed his caster and stuck my own into the space between his armor plates. White light pulsed from the opening. His body convulsed. I grabbed him as a shield and charged down the alley, firing from 2 hands on either side. One fell from my caster bolts. The other braced as I pushed his fellow's thorax roughly against him. The force was enough to knock him over. I clambered past my makeshift bodyguard, shot the second, and punched the last in his perceptor. I snatched the other 2 casters and ran back toward GildeMar. The keepers had him pinned down. He cowered under the red-plumed miniature trees and shouted expletives as white bolts collided with the planter and sparks cascaded over him. I fired all 4 guns in rapid succession. One keeper went down. I beelined for his prone body and dove. The metal street rasped at my skin. A projectile soared over my abdomen. 2 more hit the keeper I was hiding behind, and 1 ricocheted off the road. "VerDen, I don't care what the Council says. I'll beat you to death after we incapacitate you," shouted one of the Order. I chuckled silently. He had revealed his position. I popped up and fired a single shot into the mouthy keeper. It hit him dead in the perceptor, and his body wriggled from neurological distress. I easily targeted the others while their casters still charged. I shot one and he went down. I fired at another and my bolt glanced off his armor. A second hit put him down. I discarded all 4 firearms and rushed the last. His bolt went wide and scorched the street beside me. "You've never fought the Omniskizens, have you?" I asked the quivering keeper. "You've never had to obliterate a charging Venator, or go toe-to-toe with a Magna Tormenta?" "No, I haven't. Please just let me go," he said. His perceptor narrowed as his gun regained its charge. "And I don't care, imbecile!" He pressed his finger into the trigger. I swatted the gun away. A white projectile whistled into the sky. "It shows," I said, as I shoved my fingers into his smug perceptor. "Grab a gun, GildeMar. We're not out of the bog yet," I yelled to his coward position. "And what am I supposed to do with one? I don't know how to shoot," he whined. "A child could do it. I'm not asking you to hit, just to distract. Lead on. Fastest path this time. No more alleys or evasion. We go straight from here on out." GildeMar cautiously continued down the wide road. He ran from fence to low wall, alley to covered porch. "We're in a hurry here. Stop hiding," I said. "I don't want to get shot, lethal or not," he replied. "You won't. The Order Keepers are nothing if not loud. They don't even know how to be discreet. I'll hear them before we see them. Get us to the ship. I'll tell you when to hide." We moved out of the residential sector and into the industrial. Quaint homes gave way to factories that spewed out steam and corrosion. The council had decreed that we maintain a semblance of ecological prudence, yet still acidic elements ate away at the surroundings. Buildings decayed at a rapid rate, the road was pockmarked, and the air lay stagnant. "Are we close?" I asked. "Yes, just a few blocks further." I heard something scuffle over the rusted street. "Get into cover," I said. A rapid-fire beam gun repeated in the distance. Its energy illuminated the avenue with a strobing purple glow. I saw keepers hiding in the shadows, and among them was a familiar stature. I stood in the center of the road. "I know you're there. Come out so we can settle this like gentle Myuln," I said, using the phrase I knew would draw him out.
"So this is how it's going to be. You and me, dueling it out like the good old days. You've never bested me before. What makes you think you can do it now?"
asked Maugrip, as he exited the safety of cover to match my stance. The other keepers drew their casters and poked out of their hiding spots.
"Stop!"
shouted Maugrip.
"This is between me and VerDen. Anyone that interferes will be executed by my own hands."
I stared Maugrip down. "I'm calling you out as a friend and a mentor. I win, and you let us pass without hindrance. You win, and we will submit. Do you agree to these terms?" I asked.
"For sure. But what use are these pea shooters? If it's to be a duel, it should be a duel to the death on equal terms. None of my men could refuse that. They will honor the terms. Bickwit! The pistols."
A frail keeper ran out with a case containing deadly beamers and holsters to hold them.
"I never thought we'd meet like this. I figured I'd broken your rebellious spirit. When I heard you were captain of the Grand Rampart, I was almost proud," said Maugrip.
Bickwit brought him the first gun. Maugrip removed his armor. His black, dyed skin affronted my senses. "I have my reasons, Maugrip. Did the council tell you the truth, or are you just blindly following their whim, as you always have?" Bickwit scrambled over and handed me the twin beamer and holster. I strapped it to my thorax and slammed the pistol into place.
I follow orders, as we all should. We're not meant to think, just to act. You're an abomination to what it means to be Myuln,"
shouted Mogrip as he fastened his own holster. "I'm sorry you think that way. I'm not giving in, to you or the Council. I'll admit that they led us through the catastrophe of the Texamorphs, but what else have they done right? We're in such dire straits that even a single ship is too much for them to bear. My lifemate is out there. You can't stand in my way," I said. Mogrip ignored me.
"On 3, Bickwit, give us a count,"
he commanded. Bickwit positioned himself equidistant from both of us and started to count. 3!
"Remember when you were but a whelp in the Order Academy? No one thought you would amount to much,"
said Mogrip. 2! said Bickwit. "You saw my potential. You beat me down until I shaped up. I'm sorry it has to go down like this. You're the reason I'm the best fighter on Myuln," I said. 1! shrieked Bickwit. I drew the beamer and skittered sideways. Mogrip pulled his free. We fired at the same time. A purple beam grazed my lower right shoulder. I collapsed to the ground and looked up. Mogrip swayed in place. A gaping hole penetrated his thorax. He grasped at his internal organs and then fell forward. The Order Keepers jumped from their concealment, ready to lash me to a pain rack. I brandished the beamer, ready for a fight. "Shove off!" shouted Bickwit. "Is this any way to honor Mogrip's memory? He agreed to the duel. Many of you may not remember, but we used to be an honorable people. This conflict is at an end. The Council will have to deal with us and his failure." I bowed my cephalothorax in respect. Bickwit did the same. GildeMar cautiously exited his hiding spot. We continued unhindered. The keepers glared their perceptors as we passed, but none of them dared to stop us. As we walked past Mogrip, he uttered a few last words.
"I am proud."
Keepers dragged his body away. The beam gun stopped its rapid report. The streets returned to silence. GildeMar broke the silence. "What in Turkum was that?" he asked. "Mogrip was my teacher. Long ago, I was a student at the Order Academy. We used to put on mock duels in honor of our ancestors. He was always a great lover of our history. He taught me how to fight. The Texamorphs taught me how to survive. Mogrip wasn't ready for that." "You were a keeper?" "Is my skin dyed black?" "No, I never graduated." "Why not?" "Let's just say that I had a fundamental philosophical disagreement with the Academy head and leave it at that," I responded. GildeMar thought to continue his interrogation, but one look at my scrunched perceptor told him otherwise. We walked to the factory. Immediately, the beam machine gun pointed at us from a vantage point on the roof.
"Who's there?"
asked the gunner. "It's me, idiot. Open the door," replied GildeMar.
"Oh, I figured you two would be in a holding cell by now. Let them in. It's GildeMar," shouted the gunner. The huge metal door slid into the ground. We entered the dimly illuminated factory floor. GildeMar immediately started shouting orders. "Get the spare power cells on board and warm up the atmospheric thrusters. Make sure the rations are sealed. Load the weaponry and turn on the lights. I don't want everyone stumbling over themselves in the dark." The overhead illumination warmed into brightness, revealing the ship. The craft was shaped like an elongated oval and big enough to fill nearly the entirety of the immense room. Its surface was a hazy golden color. 6 legs held it above the floor. From what I could see,
There was a large triangle attached near what I assumed was the rear of the ship. A gray tube extended from the point of the triangle. 2 rectangular protrusions were equally spaced on the exterior and had similar tubes sticking out of their bottoms. Best I could figure, these engines were mirrored on the opposite side and composed the propulsion system.
"Everyone, get on board," yelled GildeMar. "VerDen bought us time, but it won't be long until the order is upon us."
Wait, I didn't sign up for this. I don't want to go to space, shouted one of GildeMar's guildmates.
"Fine, stay. More room for us," stated GildeMar. "Just know that you are accomplices to what went down. We are all criminals now. If you want to stay and face your sentence, so be it. I hope that they will be merciful. The rest of you get on the ship, and someone open the roof."
About half of his guildmates left the factory. GildeMar led me to a lift under the spacecraft. 4 others gathered on the lift. A 5th came running down the stairs. "Wait for me!" he yelled. I recognized his voice as that of the gunner. His figure was not what I expected. He was a giant among Myuln. He was twice my height and muscled beyond belief. He even carried the massive, typically mounted beamer that he had used to hold off the keepers in one enormous hand. "Where'd you find this guy?" I asked GildeMar.
"Oh, him? That's my brother, Gildekaz," replied GildeMar, and turned his attention to his sibling. "I wouldn't leave you. Hurry up, you fat oaf. We've sky to burn."
Gildekaz rushed onto the lift and GildeMar hit the button. The platform ascended into our metal coffin. Claustrophobia immediately hit me. It took all my resolve just to calm down. This is for VerShyk. This is for VerShyk, I thought over and over.
"Let's get this bird airborne,"
yelled GildeMar as he rushed to the controls. I braced against the tumbling of my perception. I felt the ship lift off. Explosions buffeted the exterior of the vessel. I swayed queasily from the experience. Sheer willpower kept me upright. For VerShyk. For VerShyk. I blacked out. "VerDen? VerDen?" said a voice. "VerShyk?" I asked. Laughter erupted in my mind.
"Nope, guess again,"
said GildeMar. Ugh. What happened?
"You're in space, bud. We did it. We're on our way."
Space?
"Yep. We're in the clear now. The engine is performing perfectly. We're on track to the planet. Nothing can stop us now."
"Good," I said as I tried to stand. The hallway warped into motion. I stumbled and fell again.
"VerDen, just focus on a happy memory. You should have told me you suffered from claustrophobia. It won't last long. We have a long voyage ahead of us. You'll get over it. Ask me questions. That can help distract you."
I struggled against my anxiety-ridden mind. I thought of the day that I, Tarden, had become VerDen. "Why is the hull golden instead of bronze?" I asked.
"I had to come up with a new alloy given the shortage of metal from the construction of the fleet. It gave the ship a dull gold hue. It's still strong, but not quite as much as the fleet construction. That's why I built it as a cylinder. It's a stronger shape for travel in a vacuum."
"Why is Gildekaz so big?"
"He suffers from a congenital disease. It doesn't affect his mind, just his body. He's really a genius like me. He helped solve the problem of adequate thrust to get us off Myuln."
"How much further do we have to go?"
"Ugh. It's going to be months. Don't think about it. Come with me and meet the rest of the crew. And focus on that memory. You'll get through this."
I followed him through the cramped corridor. We entered a room lined with consoles. A solitary Myuln stood inserting her fingers into the computers. "This is Motwin. She is our scribe. Anything of note that you experience should be run through her. She recorded the construction of this vessel, and she records every mundane detail of our voyage. Motwin, this is VerDen, the second part of the muscle," said GildeMar. Motwin nodded at me without turning as her fingers continued in and out of the machines. I nodded back even as the colored lights of the consoles swam within my perceptor. GildeMar led me further. He explained the rooms as we passed. "That would have been one of the ship-to-ship weapons bays, had we been allowed to finish. That's our clinic. Nobody here has any real medical experience. That coward abandoned us at the factory. But it's chock full with enough bandages and drugs to supply a small hospital. Surgical saws, too, in case... Never mind. You know. We should get you fixed up." GildeMar sprayed antiseptic on my arm. I hissed from the pain, but the sensation brought me back for a moment from the brink of unconsciousness. He bandaged me up and led on. "Here, near the center of the ship, is the helm. It's also where our power supply lies. Don't want to make those an easy target. We'll come back to visit Donmer. Asteroid field. She needs to focus at the moment. And down here is where all our quarters are. And here is the mess hall." We entered a wide room with 6 tables. 3 Myulns stood around a single table. Little holographic figures projected from round emitters. The miniatures fought against each other on the surface. The 3 placed bets as to which would win. One of the gamblers was Gildekaz. My anxiety fizzled into a dull panic. I felt comfort here. "Everyone, this is VerDen. Treat him with as much respect as you'd treat me," said GildeMar. "So, none?" asked another of the players. "Exactly," proclaimed GildeMar. "I'll stay here. I need to stay here," I said out of panicked relief. "Well, I hope you're a risk-taker," said the gamer, "because I'm planning to take you all for everything you're worth." "That's Vitquer. He helped weld this ramshackle vessel together. The other is Shirkafik. She was instrumental in designing the shape and function of the ship. The last, of course, is my brother Gildekaz, but you already know that. Are you sure you don't want to move on?" asked GildeMar. "I just want to stay here. I'll do my best to accommodate the other crewmates, but I need to stay here." "You haven't met Donmer yet. She's the only one I trust to navigate in my absence. You should see her. She's quite a marvel," said GildeMar. "No, I need to stay here. I'll meet her eventually. Everyone gets hungry. I need to stay here. I can't go any further," I said. "Fine, I understand. I'll update you on our progress," replied GildeMar. He left. "So, you know anything about Kurhaz?" Vitquer asked me. "Who is Kurhaz?" I asked slyly. Shirkafik laughed at my unsubtle attempt at deception. "I think you'll fit in just fine. Gildekaz, fetch another emitter for VerDen." "Kurhaz," I reminisced. Another favorite of the late Magrip. He almost always beat me despite the game being largely reliant on chance. Such fun, though, especially when I won multiple meal tickets from the other cadets. Gildekaz produced another emitter and placed it in front of me. I examined him, Vitquer, and Shirkafik. Kurhaz was a game of psychology. On the surface, it was similar to the childhood game of stone, sickle, or weed. But below that was a complex system of weaknesses and strengths. Each hologram was equipped to deal with a set of others, but they would weaken from each encounter. Random chance determined who your little warrior would fight first. I chose the spear wielder and won the first match.
Beginner's luck,
said Vitquer.
Luck? I don't think so, said Shirkafik. We might be out of our league here.
Another. There's no way. It's a statistical improbability that VerDen will win again. Let's go. What do we have to lose? Our Myulnese mean little in space,
said Gildekaz. You sure about another game? I've got all three of you pegged. I'll happily take more of your lees. But if we ever return to Myuln, I'd hate to leave you all destitute, I said.
Oh, that's it. It's on,
replied Vitquer. Our games of Kurhaz became a regular occurrence. GildeMar instructed Gildekaz to have my mattress moved to the mess hall, and I managed to sleep despite my disdain of our metallic coffin. I found comfort in the routine of it. Twice daily, most everyone would eat their meal, and after each meal, we would play numerous games of Kurhaz. The only one who failed to arrive for a meal was Donmer. GildeMar delivered her sustenance directly to the helm, seemingly eager to be free of the responsibility. Eventually, I worked up the courage to endure another set of VerShyk's logs.
Log 7. Science Lead VerShyk reporting. The lab tests have confirmed my hypothesis. Upon examination of the fluid, I learned that the texamorphs turn all organic matter into usable material upon contact. The texamorph threat is viral in nature. It doesn't spread as far as I know, but contact is fatal. We need to cut them off from their food source. I brought my findings to the council and they agreed. I advised an aggressive assault to nip this threat in the bud. On this point, they disagreed. They commissioned the construction of a bulwark around the Turcomet jungle. I tried to argue that the people would not easily give up access to such a spiritual location. They ignored my advice. The wall will be built immediately around the outskirts of the jungle. I hope it holds, but I have my doubts. Log 8. VerShyk reporting. The building of the wall has gone off without a hitch. Maybe the council was right, but every day I look over the waning trees, I feel they were wrong. The omnischisms are eating away at every plant and animal. From my vantage point, I can see a bald spot forming on Myuln as the texamorphs take more and more. I never thought I would live to see such a sacrilege. It's an abomination, and there is nothing I can do about it. The council has spoken. I wish I could tell people why. I wish I could tell VerDen why, but I can't. I wish I could tell him why I'm gone for long periods of time. The council doesn't want to panic. It's stupid. Everyone will know soon enough. Log 9. The Grand Rampart is complete and Turcomet dwindles. The texamorphs are close enough that I can almost feel the extinction of natural life forms. I feel a need to preserve what remains. I'm going to ask the council to grant me an expedition into the heart of this matter. We need to know where they are coming from and how to stop them. Log 10. The motion passed in the council by a thin margin. I have selected my team. They are the best on Myuln, minus my VerDen. I will admit, I can't stand putting him at risk, despite his qualifications. I spent the day preparing them for what was to come. I told them that to be touched was to suffer amputation or death. This elite group took this information in stride. They seemed to think they were invincible. How wrong they were. We punched hard into texamorph territory. 2 succumbed immediately under the grasping limbs of the omnischisms. The remaining foes were driven off. We continued. The Venators surrounded us. 6 more were consumed. I thought we were doomed. The remaining 22 managed to stay alive. I had learned my lesson from the first expedition and armed myself with a pair of blades. I, myself, struck against this threat and saved several lives. My skill with a blade grew. No longer did I clumsily hack at the enemy. I danced a deadly waltz through their ranks. It was simplistic but effective. Still more died and disintegrated into the fluid. We made our way to the center of the destruction. I thought this was it. We managed to find the source. Surely we could destroy it. We set up a well-guarded outpost a distance away and prepared. Log 11. No, no, no! 7 of the team died. How could we have prepared for this? The new being towered over us in height. Its body was flat, held aloft on 8 sturdy legs. I cowered as brown spikes shot from its back and skewered us with explosive shards. I named it Magna Tormenta. The team managed to kill it, but not before multiple casualties. The Omnischisms gathered our dead. I followed. Dust crunched under my feet where before jungle had consumed the land. The Texamorphs and their prey vanished into thin air. I set a scanner where they had disappeared and retreated back to the outpost. Log 12. VerShyk again. Report. No report. What does it matter? I'm just a pawn in this fight. The team made its way back to the city. 4 more died. I and only 2 others of the 30 Myuln team made it back. My initial recommendation stands. My scanner somehow shifted through the Texamorph transportation node and provided us telemetry on their planet of origin. I argued that we send another elite team through. We know how their node works now. It was the fastest and best way to combat their invasion. The Council saw differently. They set about building a fleet of ships to combat the threat. I was conscripted to one of these future vessels.
What? Is this corruption? I didn't know mental logs could even suffer corruption, I thought. I tried to fiddle with the file. Nothing looked wrong. I slammed my fist on the computer console. Hey, VerDen, up for another game of Curtiss? I'm sick of losing leads, but it sure beats the boredom of space travel, said Shirkafik. I was aggravated to be interrupted, but I understood. The rest of the crew knew nothing of VerShyk. They were just passing the time. I took them up on another game. In the midst of our Curtiss battles, GildeMar finally came out of the helm for a meal. I completely lost focus on Curtiss. It was ridiculous. I'm here for VerShyk. Curse you, I said to myself. Curse you for noticing her beauty. Stop. Stop. VerDen, get a hold of yourself. I am faithful to my lifemate. Remember why you came here. I won. Finally a little good fortune, cried Vitquer. I wandered away from the table toward GildeMar. She scavenged around until she found a suitably flavored ration. Hi, I'm VerDen. I don't believe we've met yet, I said. The ship trembled and jolted to one side. All of us slammed into the walls of the room. The vessel stabilized and we nursed our bruises. Turkum, save us! I knew I shouldn't have left GildeMar at the wheel, shouted GildeMar as she rushed out of the mess hall. I sorted myself, gathered a couple of stray emitters, and returned to the table. What was that? Asked Shirkafik. I don't know, but GildeMar seems to think it was GildeMar's exceptional navigation, I replied. Another crash buffeted the ship. The shoddy telepathic amplifier system crackled to life. We have feasters aboard. Somebody grab the beamers. They're eating through the door to the helm, came the voice of GildeMar. Feasters! Of all the things that could go wrong, it had to be feasters, I thought. I forgot about my claustrophobia and rushed headlong for the armory. The others followed close to my tail. I cursed the doorway as it slowly slid into the floor. GildeMar said they were at the helm. Hopefully they haven't expanded far. I entered the armory and grabbed a set of beamer pistols and 2 curved knives. Gildekaz equipped his favorite heavy beam gun. If only we had a few flame casters. I had never fought them myself, but feasters were notorious for being hard to kill beyond incineration. A scream came from behind us. I and Gildekaz rushed out into the hall. Shurkafik's back leg intertwined with a strand of bright red, wrapping and constricting all the way to her abdomen. A white web of threads spread over her hip. Moisture sucked out of her leg. Her flesh mummified. Her skin wrinkled inward as the feasters sucked away her life. I fired a shot behind her at the string of red. It severed and the tendril desiccated into gray dust. She wept at the loss of her rear quarter. It dragged uselessly behind her as she scuttled toward us. I had dealt with similar emotions from victims of the Texamorph threat. Most succumbed mentally to the loss of limbs. I wouldn't let that happen here. Shurkafik, you can still move. Many I've known would envy your circumstance. You survived, but you still need to survive. We're with you. You have the exquisite opportunity to take revenge. Let's send these motherless beasts back where they came from, I cried. Shurkafik nodded and grabbed a beam rifle from the armory. Gildekaz laid down fire on the slithering feaster's strands. Donmer armed herself with a pistol, a sword, and 2 knives. The last was Vitquer. He entered and fiddled with the door mechanism. All of us were too busy fighting off the feaster growth to notice. The door slammed shut. Vitquer, what are you doing? I asked. Staying alive. I'm no fighter. You 4 will manage. I won't open the door until the feasters are dead. You coward, I said, but there was no time. I led our group toward the helm. The narrow corridor threatened to take my consciousness. I have to do this, or the feasters will destroy the ship. VerShyk would have my hide for not remembering their scientific name. It's just a highly animated slime mold, a mindless, nutrient-obsessed being. If we can destroy the source, the rest will wither and die. Focus! No one can afford you to collapse now. Slime trails brought me fully back from the brink of a blackout. I fired at the red menace. Gildekaz drew shoulder to shoulder with me. He unleashed a barrage of purple blasts. We sustained fire until our beamers grew hot. The feaster paths shriveled and receded from our onslaught. The door was clear. GildeMar, you're free to leave. VerDen and I carved a path for you, said Gildekaz, as he slammed his fist against the door. We are not out of this yet. I still need to steer the ship. You 2 need to destroy the pods or we'll never be rid of the beasts, called GildeMar through the half-eaten door. They've honed in on our power source. You know the stories. They won't stop until it's gone. Someone needs to guard the door. Don't worry about atmospheric breaches. I'll close them. Just get the feaster pods off the hull. I'm reading 1 just past medical and 1 further down near the quarters and engine bay. I nodded to Gildekaz. This is why we're here, after all. We're the muscle. He nodded back, and we rushed down the trail of bright slime. We left Donmer and Shurkafik to guard the door. I let my beamer pistols recharge as Gildekaz obliterated strands of red. As soon as his beam machine gun overheated, I shuffled past him to keep the pressure on. We moved in this rotating fashion toward the first breach. I finished shooting and Gildekaz took the lead. The red growth consolidated into a mass that blocked our passage. Purple beams ate away sections of the writhing tumor.
Gildekaz's machine gun stopped. I ran to take his place when a string of fiber shot from the mass. It struck Gildekaz in the lower left shoulder and sucked. White fibers covered his arm. I cut away the red tendril with my knife as another string stabbed to the right of his perceptor. Red flailed its way toward me. I ducked behind poor Gildekaz. Gildekaz shrieked as the moisture left his vital organs, the feaster tubes engorged with his stolen fluid. White fibers spread over his entirety. He shriveled away. All that was left was a wrinkled mess of sunken flesh stretched over bones. The feasters, true to their name, coiled over the remains. The fibers flowed over his desiccated corpse. They sucked and sucked until his bones collapsed into dust. I backed away, not out of fear, but because of my target. Gildekaz's heavy machine gun lay right next to the mass of wriggling crimson and ivory. I positioned myself around a corner and leaned around. The feasters, never satiated, grew new trails toward me. 2 shots cracked the casing of the gun. Gases hissed, arcs of purple energy crackled through the air, and the beamer glowed white-hot. I dove to the floor. The explosion rocked the ship. A shockwave rushed through the hull and buffeted my body. I scrambled as the vacuum of space threatened to rip me from the safety of the vessel. It pulled me across the floor. All my armaments slid away from me. My fingers scrabbled uselessly against the metal. I flipped over, looked, and saw the void staring back. Stars twinkled mockingly in the deadly expanse. I looked left and right, desperately searching for something to hold on to. I felt like I was free-falling toward the emptiness beyond the ragged, charred hole in the side of the ship. I saw a section of conduit running along the wall. I kicked the opposite side to propel myself toward the pipe. I grabbed the conduit. Friction rubbed all 4 of my hands raw. My shoulders ached in their sockets. My body slowed until I came to a stop. I struggled to hold on. Just as my fingers were about to give out, a door rose to block the breach. The vacuum pull ceased. I laid on the floor, breathing heavily and recovering from the ordeal. Well, on the bright side, my fear of the void overrides my claustrophobia, I thought, pondering the perilous prospect of dying out there in the wide open empty. In Tercum's name, I told you guys to destroy the feaster pods, not half the ship. I guess it doesn't matter. 1 pod down, 1 to go, cried GildeMar. I wanted to tell him of his brother's demise, but the amplifier only went one way. Besides, I had bigger things to worry about. My weapons were spaced. I was unarmed and not keen on taking on the feasters with fist alone. Back to Vitquer in the armory. I need guns. Lots of guns. I'll kill him if I have to. I navigated the corridors back to the helm. Fortunately, it was safe enough, now that the pod on this side of the ship had been destroyed. I approached Donmer and Shurkafik as they fired at the encroaching mold. I grabbed the sword from Donmer. I'm borrowing this, I said as I ran past. Wait, what happened to Gildekaz? Asked Shurkafik. Dead. Feasters got him. What? Cried GildeMar, but I was already making my way toward the armory. The sword felt well balanced in my hands. Its handle was long enough that I could wield it with 2, and it cut through the feasters with ease. I slashed my way through the odd strand of red here and there, but it seemed that they hadn't infested this area of the ship as much as the rear sections. Then I saw the armory. The door had been crushed inward. Feaster trails swarmed through the gaping hole. I cut them away with 1 swift slash. Vitquer, are you still in there? I asked. There was no answer. I ripped away the dead feaster swarm and ducked through the hole in the door. Vitquer's wrinkled corpse lay in the center of the room. Serves you right, coward. I gathered up multiple beamer pistols and fastened them all along my abdomen. Then I saw it. At the end of the armory was a relic of the past. It was shoved onto a bottom shelf. The rifle harkened back to a simpler time on Myuln, a time when Myulnan countries vied for dominance against each other, while regular folk struggled to survive on the frontier. It was sleek, light, and beautiful, with ebony inlaid redwood, etchings depicting mythical heroes, and the old-school crystallized metal parts. I pulled it free and pumped the lever of the rudimentary recharge action. I fired a test shot through the hole in the door. A marvelous pulse of blue exited the muzzle. It was weaker than the beamers, but this pulsar would never overheat, and I could fire it as fast as I could cycle the lever. My perceptor wiggled with glee. With armaments secured, I exited the armory. Something grabbed at me. I almost attacked. It was Motwin. She clung to my cephalothorax with immense pressure.
"Oh, VerDen, I'm so scared. What's going on? Protect me, VerDen,"
she said. "Get off me," I replied as I shook her free. "We're under attack. Arm yourself and get to the helm. Didn't you hear, GildeMar? We have feasters aboard."
"I'm frightened. I can't fight. You need to protect me."
My perceptor scrunched up in anger. What is she doing? I thought.
"I'm trying to. Leave me and grab a gun. Babysitting is not in my list of duties."
"You don't have to be so cruel. I may just be a recorder, but I have feelings too,"
she whined.
"Your feelings are the last of my concerns. I need to destroy the feaster pod before they suck us all dry. Be gone. I'm on a mission."
She pouted but followed my directions. I hurried to the pod near the engine bay. The density of feaster tendrils increased. I pumped the pulsar and blasted them into sizzling pulp. Nearly there, just a bit further. I stopped in my tracks. The feasters receded. They were retreating. What are they doing? This is just a slime mold. It's not sentient. Why would they flee? I hesitated, but had to continue. I need to get rid of the pod regardless, I thought, but I knew better from the Texamorphs than to underestimate an opponent. I slung the pulsar over my shoulders, discarded the sword, and equipped 4 beam pistols in each hand. I rounded a corner. Strings of feasters bore down on me from a conglomeration of the things waiting just out of sight. I was ready. I blasted holes through the majority. Only 2 managed to stick me. I felt my nerves deaden as white offshoots of the mold invaded my body. I ignored them and blasted into the mass in front of me. When all the pistols overheated, I tossed them to the side and drew 4 more. I continued fire until the glob reduced to sizzled tissue. Sensation returned to the numbed points of intrusion. I pushed forward. Tendrils splayed out and jumped toward me from multiple sides. I shot at the stalks that had formed them. They shriveled away midair. My beamers issued purple death until they also failed. I discarded them and switched to the dated pulsar just as the pod came into view. Blue energy cascaded onto the feaster pod. Its hold lessened on the whole of the ship. I recharged over and over as fast as I could. Suction from the vacuum of space pulled me toward the opening gap between red tendrils and hazy gold metal. A strand lurched toward my thorax. I snatched it out of the air. Little threads wound their way through my fingers. I felt the fluid drain from my hand. I jerked roughly and the feaster attached to me snapped apart. It collapsed and I sent a blue pulse down its length. I didn't let up. I shot and shot until the pod lost its grasp on the ship. Knowing the impending force of the vacuum, I grabbed at the nearest solid object. The door frame proved sufficient. GildeMar closed the breach with a single door near the outer limits of the hull. I fell to the floor once again and heaved with exhaustion. "Feaster threat neutralized," said GildeMar through the amplifier. Go about your business." He sounded broken up. I would feel the same if my own loved one had died. I sauntered somberly toward the helm. Before I reached the juncture, Myuln collapsed over me.
"VerDen, you did it. You saved us all. I knew you could. Thank you, thank you."
"Leave me be. I need to talk to GildeMar," I said.
"Oh, of course. But when you need female company, I'll be at my post in the log room. Don't tarry too long."
I shook my cephalothorax in agitation. Myuln is unhinged, I thought. I continued toward the helm. Donmer stood resolute with a somber expression over her preceptor. "Where is Shirkafik?" I asked.
"She didn't make it,"
replied Donmer. I looked across to the floor. Dark green blood smeared across it and off past. That's bizarre, I thought. When the feasters attacked Gildekaz and I, they slurped up any blood we would have left. My thoughts were interrupted by GildeMar emerging from the helm.
"VerDen, how did he die?"
"As he lived, he died protecting me from the feasters. I would not be here had he not sacrificed himself to save me," I said.
"Good. That's how he wanted to go. I need some time. Donmer, the helm, if you will,"
said GildeMar, on the verge of a breakdown. Donmer inclined her thorax and entered the helm. GildeMar sauntered off toward what was left of the quarters.
"This is worse than when all those people disappeared,"
he thought. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but GildeMar, in his grief, had forgotten to switch from external thought to internal. I wondered what he meant by that, but I didn't have the heart to grill him on it just yet. Instead, I focused on the blood. Something about it just didn't sit right with me, and despite an eagerness to return to the corrupted data log, I needed to investigate. I remembered Maugrip telling us cadets that the best skill we could develop as an order keeper was instinct.
"When you're thick in the bog, no leads, no witnesses, nothing to go off of, trust that little itch in your perceptor," he had said. "It's the best lead or witness you could hope for."
I may not have become a full-fledged keeper, but my perceptor was itching something fierce. I followed the trail of green around 2 corners. At its end was a pile of dead feasters. I ripped the brittle fibers away. Underneath lay a pile of dust and partially eaten bones. It was undoubtedly Shirkafik, but I didn't know what to make of it. I sifted through the dust, looking for anything out of the ordinary. The only thing I found was a tiny fragment of bone and an even smaller nick on the edge of that bone. It looked like the char of a beamer, but I wasn't certain. It could just be an unfortunate incident of well-intentioned friendly fire. Doesn't explain the blood, though. A beamer doesn't cause bleeding. Gah, it's probably nothing. You're too used to jumping at your own hindquarters. I left the Shirkafik mystery unsolved, but resolved to find a solution for the unplayable log. I went back to the mess hall. It felt empty, depressingly so. Only hours ago, I had been playing Kurhaz with my late crewmates. It felt ridiculous. I had lost numerous Myulnins to the Texamorphs, but still this hit me harder. It took me a few minutes, standing over the table where we had played our game, to realize why. These were not underlings or co-workers. They were my friends, even Vitquer. I reset the emitters as a sort of shrine to their memory. I modified the game until it was a custom, unwinnable version of Kurhaz. I chose warriors that I thought most exemplified their personalities. Vitquers was the dagger-wielding assassin, Shurkafik got the archer, and Gildekaz had the shield-bearing bastion. The holograms would fight forever on the tabletop. Satisfied with my memorial, I returned to the computer and VerShyk's log. I struggled with it for a time. I reconfigured the parameters until VerShyk's voice sounded squeaky and high-pitched. Nothing. I rearranged the order of the logs so that it was a nearly incomprehensible mashup of anachronistic ramblings. Nothing. I smacked and kicked the array of machines until it sputtered out the log like a stuttering invalid. Obviously nothing. I groaned as the answer came to me. Oh no, but she's the only one that can do it, I thought. I downloaded the original log, walked to the room, and braced for the inevitable awkward encounter. The door whooshed into the floor. Myuln pressed fingers in and out of the consoles. She turned toward me upon my entry.
Finally,
she said.
I've been anxiously waiting for you to show your perceptor.
Whoa, no, Myuln, just no. That's not why I'm here. I already have a lifemate. I'm sorry, but it won't happen, I replied. Her perceptor went bright neon pink. She turned back to her consoles and started inserting fingers again. Wait, I need your expertise. I have a log, but it seems to be corrupted or something. Is there anything you can do? I asked. She continued to ignore me. Myuln, please. This is important.
As important as leading on a young Myuln woman? I thought you were spectacular. That we could have been spectacular together. And now I learn that you're taken? Sorry if I'm not very receptive to your favors. I was ready and willing to be yours. This is embarrassing.
I didn't mean for this to happen. VerShyk, my lifemate, is why I'm here. I thought you knew. She was on the fleet. I need to find out if she's still alive. Myuln stopped. She turned away from the computers to face me and asked,
So I still have a chance?
I nearly collapsed to the floor, but managed to hold my composure. She's insane. I have to lie. I need to know what's on that log. Of course you do. She's probably dead anyway. But until I know, I can't betray her. You can understand that, right? It's the same loyalty I will show you if she is deceased, I fibbed.
Oh, VerDen, I knew you were an honorable man. I'll help you in any way I can.
Thank you. It's this log, I said as I uploaded it to the mainframe of the ship. I can't figure out why it cuts out at the end. Myuln turned to the screen and started to fiddle with the mechanisms. Her fingers moved with impressive speed as she pored over the data. Regardless, I stood there for an hour before she finally spoke.
It's been encrypted and scrambled. Someone didn't want anyone to know what was on that last bit of the log. I've done my best. It won't be perfect, but you should be able to understand most of it. I tried to get out of my obligation, but they coerced me. VerDen, my lifemate, was to be captain of the Grand Rampart where I to refuse. Would surely die. No other option. I boarded my ship upon its completion and hoped that our lengthy journey would be and triumphant. It was my only way of preventing my lifemate from experiencing the horrors I had endured.
Evil tyrants! They lied to her. They lied to me. The instant the fleet was gone, the council appointed me as the captain of the Grand Rampart. VerShyk, they betrayed us! I cried out on our personal telepathway. Ruling class or not, banishment or not, I would never forgive them. I stormed out of the log room without giving Myuln a second glance. I stomped straight to the helm. GildeMar was piloting the ship now. "How long?" I asked. "VerDen, go back to the mess hall. I have nothing to report yet," he responded. "How long?" "We're already there. What do you want me to say?" "It doesn't look good. The fleet should have contacted us days ago. As it is, I'm not sure any of them survived." "Land!" I commanded. "Land? I'm not sure we should. I expected the fleet to be out there in space. If the Texamorphs still live on the planet, we won't survive. We didn't have time to bring the weapon systems online. We'll be an easy target." "Land it or I'll kill you now," I said. "VerDen, you can't be." He started and turned around. He saw the seriousness in the creases of my perceptor. "Landing now, but you won't like what's down there." The ship crackled through the atmosphere. It shuddered as the atmospheric thrusters kicked on. The landing gear extended, and we nestled softly on the planet's surface. "There is an active power source off to the east. That's where you should start your search. I know I can't stop you. Go. But I choose to stay safe near the ship, attempting to make repairs. If the need arises, we will leave without you," he said. I nodded in understanding. I rushed over to the lift, ignoring the dread settling over my abdomen. The elevator opened to the destruction I feared. Chunks of the fleet rose from ashen ground like abstract death markers. My legs buckled beneath me. Half of me wanted to give up right then and there. There is almost zero chance that VerShyk survived this. But I need to know for sure. I stood, steeled myself for the worst, and set off into the wreckage of the fleet. As usual, action cleared my mind. I found myself astonished by the atmosphere. The air was close enough to Myuln that I could run without becoming winded, and the temperature was comfortable if a bit chilly. Makes me wonder if it wasn't coincidence that the Texamorphs appeared on our planet. I'm starting to sound like VerShyk, I thought with a pang of heartbreak. Soon I was lost. I wandered aimlessly through the twisted bronze metal and craters of orbital bombardment. Then I saw tracks. They were old, but I could make out the many toes of a Myuln. I followed them until the trail ended in a wind-swept valley. I could have tried to pick up the trail, but it would be a waste of time. I was better off finding the source of power, and I had strayed far from that initial heading. I figured that I was now north of the ship. I retraced the footprints back. Sure enough, the footprints led into a section of a broken fleet vessel. I examined the exterior. A series of jerry-rigged conduits ran to a remarkably intact energy core. I cautiously entered the broken ship. A red glow illuminated the interior. The holographic emitter at the center of the room was still active. It displayed the Texamorphs, including a few forms I had never encountered before. I ignored the hologram and started accessing any console that was still alive. I found it after inserting my ring into the third computer. I was nearly floored to find a continuation of VerShyk's logs. She could still be alive. I listened for any clue as to her whereabouts.
Log 11. Science Officer VerShyk of the Myuln ship Hope, reporting. I have continued experimentation on the samples I took from Turcomet. Even in space, my lab is equipped with everything I could ever need. I suppose I have the shipwright to thank. GildeMar, if this log ever gets to you, I appreciate your attention to detail when it comes to my craft. A note for the future, though. I'd appreciate some more space. I may not be claustrophobic like VerDen, but I like to be able to stretch my legs. There I go on another tangent. Anyway, I have studied the Texamorph virus. It doesn't respond to any antiviral we have produced. I'm not sure it will die from anything other than extreme heat or blunt force trauma. It almost feels like the virus is mocking my effort. It adapts to the medicine rapidly. It actively dodges toxins, and it even shifts form before I can perform another experiment. Amputation remains the sole treatment for exposure. Anything else would kill the host as well. Don't get me wrong, I'm not giving up. At least I have something to do. The others are jaded and restless. It took some espionage, but I've learned that at least half of our forces don't want to be here. They were drafted into service, usually under similar circumstances to my own. I dread what they're capable of. Boredom can cause many to act out on impulses that I'd rather not describe. Just know that I'm glad my laboratory has locks. Log 12, Science Officer VerShyk of the Myuln ship Hope, reporting. No progress on the Texamorph virus. I'm nearly at my wit's end. Nothing I do can stop it. It's like it has its own immune system that... Wait, that's it. We've been looking at the problem the wrong way. What if the Texamorphs are a Texamorph? A single being with many parts. I need to get back to my lab. Log 13. VerShyk, whatever, of the ship Who Cares. Ships in the fleet are randomly detonating like fireworks on Turkham's Day. We entered orbit of the planet when it started. I swear, GildeMar, if I survive and you're responsible, I'll gouge out your perceptor. It's all speculation, but it seems that the instant any ship engages its auxiliary thrusters to maintain an orbital trajectory, it explodes. I relayed this information to the captain, and he managed to set us on orbit without using the thrusters. He messaged the remaining fleet, and we are stable for now. The real concern is what their sensors relayed about the planet below. It is a swarming mass of Texamorph forms. Every inch of the planet is covered with them, and they seem to be massing for an attack. I dread that they are forming to attack Myuln. Log 14, VerShyk reporting. The orbital bombardment has commenced. I wonder what kind of world existed here before the Texamorph. Maybe it was like our planet. Maybe it was alive with civilization, culture, art. I loathe what we could be destroying, but I know it's necessary. After, I hope to send a team down to examine the remains. This is a planet of graves, and I want to know the dead before they are lost to history. I need to focus. We're here to do a job. We need to kill the Texamorph before the same thing happens to our planet. I know it's our survival at stake, but I often wonder if we're in the right. Is it really any different than us? It has a larger scale, no doubt, but in the grand scheme of things, it just wants to survive. It eats organic matter to grow and thrive. Are we not guilty of the same crime? No, that's stupid. The Texamorph consumes everything and anything organic. At least we discriminate based on sentience and attempt to curb our appetite in the name of preservation. We are not destruction. We are natural order. Ecosystems still survive our hunger. This thing, it just consumes... What was that? The ship is going down. Hope is losing... Log 15. The Locus Concutares blasted us out of the sky. The sensor readings I could scrounge up described them as 6-armed plasma cannons. We were hit and went down. The captain managed to mitigate the damage. We crash-landed on the planet. Among the survivors were a team of commandos. I told them my theory. Maybe they were just inspired by an easy way to obliterate the Texamorph threat, but they followed me. I set an active scanner on my back hip. The team fought hard. We destroyed numerous emplacements of Locus Concutaries and dove into enemy territory. We dodged bombardment from the fleet and approached the center of the Texamorph activity. I slashed my way through Omnischizens and Venators. We were down to 4 commandos and me. I pointed the team toward an odd geological structure. The plateau rose above the otherwise flat landscape. Sure enough, cave systems penetrated the base of the plateau, and streams of transparent fluid ran through the tunnels. I led the charge. We penetrated deep into the caves, moving slowly. Eventually, the tunnel opened into a large cavern. I felt fear like I have never felt before. I stopped by the tunnel exit as the rest ran forward. Their legs disintegrated into the liquid pool at the center of the cavern. Glowing cerulean orbs darted toward a central structure. There was a huge mass in the pool, and connective, grasping tissue anchored it to the ceiling and floor. The blue orbs flowed through its interior. I named it the Corlegio. It had to be the source. This was the Texamorph. The rest of the forms were just appendages, arms, legs, organs. I tried to tell the team to focus fire on the Collegio, but they were busy trying to survive. Miniature Omnischizens formed on the surface of the pool. They tumbled toward the commandos. I fled as telepathic shrieks reached out for me. I ran through the tunnels, out of the plateau, and back through the labyrinth of destroyed ships. I wasn't ready to die. I found shelter amongst the wreckage and set up shop. I hoped that a remnant of the fleet had survived, but as days turned to weeks, I lost hope. I managed to construct a rudimentary home for myself. I set up power and gathered rations from the ruins. At the time, it seemed that maybe the Texamorph threat had been obliterated. We had reduced the planet to ashes, after all. I found a cannon amongst the wreckage and learned to use it, just in case. Fortunately, I managed to rig a computer to function well enough that I can continue my logs. I've downloaded my scanner data into it. It only serves to solidify my theory. The Omnischizens, Venators, Magna Tormentas, and Locus Concutares are just extensions of the rapidly regenerating Corlegio. I think I'm the only one left. I don't know how, but I need to destroy the Corlegio. VerDen, if this log ever gets to you, I'm sorry. I wish we could have had the family you always wanted. I love you, my life mate. Log 16. I tried over and over to breach the fortress of the Corlegio. Each attempt failed, but somehow I survived. The Texamorph regrew in power. Omnischizens blocked my path, and Venators hunted me down. I easily dispatched them as they assaulted my shelter, but I could not manage to take the fight to it. I was cleaning my beam cannon when I heard an explosion in the distance. I saw orange blood blown from a pack of Venators. I followed a strange being and watched from afar. The creature was bipedal, had 2 arms, and a strange round growth protruded from above its shoulders. Its skin was a splotchy mess of multiple blotches of color, from tan to white, and several in between. Its black weapon fired invisible death upon the Venators and Omnischizens. I named it Venigartus. I was hesitant, but thought to test this new creature. I followed its strange, zagging path. When I was sure the Texamorph wouldn't interrupt, I revealed myself. I fired a warning shot with my beam cannon and was met with an incredible force of invisible mass on my armor. It hurt terribly, but I maintained a semblance of stoicism. The Venegartis lowered its weapon, and I lowered my beamer. The being raised one of its two arms and wiggled it. As I was trying to decipher what this meant, omnischisms dropped from a cliff nearby. I fired a beam into a group of them. Concussions erupted from the thin end of the black metal block that the Venegartis wielded. Omnischisms splattered into orange from the unseen beam. The Venegartis pulled a smaller block from the side of the weapon, shoved the block into its folds of skin, and shoved a new block in. Best I could tell, these were portable power cells. I didn't have time to speculate. The cannon was recharging, and the omnischisms converged on us. I spun with my blades held out. I cut and stabbed through the horde. Those outside the range of my swords dropped dead. I wiped one of the blades clean, thinking the battle was over. I was wrong. A Venator attacked the Venegartis. The fool drove his hand into it. I rushed to its aid. By the time I got there, it had already slain the Venator with a small secondary weapon. The virus went to work on its arm. The Venegartis slid a strap over it and tightened it down. I swung my clean sword as close to the wound as I dared. The poor creature collapsed from the shock. I carried the Venegartis and its gear on my back to the shelter. I treated the wound to the best of my ability. I cut the strap that was constricting its arm and immediately realized why it had placed it. Red fluid sprayed from the stump. Quickly, I stopped the bleeding with a lump of armor-fastening agent. I shaped a piece of scrap metal to cover it. The metal fit like a glove. Still, I'm unsure if it will survive. I've decided to give the Venegartis a different name. Not a scientific one. We're beyond that. Call it maternal instinct or something, though I never bought into that drivel. Odd, though, given that the name I've chosen is a family one. I could rationalize it like I would a pet, but this being is not a pet. It is my equal, if not greater. I've decided to call it Vermin, after my grandfather. I guess you could say I've adopted it. My curiosity got the better of me. I examined Vermin. What I thought was skin is actually a sort of light armor. The protuberance at its top seems to be a bizarre, multifaceted perceptor. I'm reminded of why I became a scientist in the first place. It has been so long since I felt the thrill of discovery. If Vermin awakes, I'm going to try to communicate. I'd wager our goal is the same. If Vermin's world is besieged, like Myuln, or if this is its world, then we have a mutual interest. Perhaps together we can find a way to destroy the Collegio. For the first time since we crashed here, I feel I may have a chance at ending this.
The plateau. If she's alive, I should be able to pick up her trail there. I fiddled with the computer. Bless you, VerShyk, I thought as I found a map of the exact route to the Collegio. I sprinted toward the plateau. My motive was to either find her or kill the Texamorph if it still lived. I nearly ran right by it into the tunnel. I caught the sight of bronze in my peripheral. I stopped and walked toward it. It was an empty set of armor. That could be anyone's armor, thought my irrational mind, but I knew it was hers. I recognized her shape, her exquisite being. VerShyk was dead. I picked up her silver ring. I turned away and moved toward the tunnel entrance, but saw tracks leading out. The footprints were a complex pattern of geometric shapes. Could this be vermin? That creature VerShyk spoke of might still be alive. It could tell me what happened, but I need to know that the Texamorph threat is gone. I wandered the dark path with only the tunnel walls to guide me. I walked until there were no more tunnel walls. A foul stench wafted into my perceptor. I continued forward until I stepped into a pool of gelatin. The smell was coming from the gel. I waded through the gunk and bumped into a large glob. Despite my disgust, I felt along its length. A wide hole punctured the center of the thing. This must be the Corlegio. Vermin really killed it. Where VerShyk failed, it continued. What kind of warrior is capable of such? I felt my way back outside and followed the strange tracks. They led far off through the shards of shattered ships. Where the trail faltered, I followed what seemed to be two eroded trails where Texamorph liquid once ran. Eventually, I entered another clearing. I saw two piles of strange, half-disintegrated creatures. Some of them had brown and white fur. Most were similar to VerShyk's description of the Venegartis. All of them had bright red patches where their flesh had melted away. Smoke wafted from behind them. I approached the source of the smoke. The Venegartis looked up at me from his crouched position near the fire. The slit near the bottom of its perceptor appendage widened. I saw that he had one bronze-capped stub. Vermin rushed toward me. I had half a mind to blast him away, but I restrained my response for the sake of VerShyk. Vermin wrapped his arms around my cephalothorax. I didn't know what to make of it. This creature isn't hostile, that much is clear. But why is it embracing me? Great warrior, Vermin, I am VerShyk's lifemate. Can you tell me what happened to her? I asked. I don't know why I was expecting a response. Of course it can't talk to you, moron. Maybe GildeMar and Myuln can work together to whip up some kind of translation device. Regardless, I'm taking Vermin with me. It's all I have left of VerShyk. She would have wanted me to care for it. I gently pushed Vermin off me and pointed toward the ship. His bulbous perceptor bobbed up and down. He followed me as I navigated the labyrinthine array of jagged metal. When we approached the ship, Vermin yipped and chittered a complex pattern of audio. No wonder it can't understand me. It speaks with sound, I thought. I looked at the ship and nodded with satisfaction. GildeMar had been hard at work repairing the breaches. Then I saw the dark green of bloodstains on the bottom hull of the ship. It looked like someone had been butchered. Donmer! I should have done something the instant I suspected her. A purple beam hit the ground near my feet and blasted ash into the air. I scrabbled away and ducked under a short chunk of fleet metal. Vermin crouched, pulled something from its hip, and slid it across its amputated arm. The Venegartis darted off toward a different structure. VerDen, VerDen, called Donmer mockingly. I know you're there, VerDen. Myuln would like to say hello. Myuln, how rude! I peeked out of my hiding spot. Donmer stood at the top of the hill, partially obscured by a few sheets of bronze-colored metal. She held a severed perceptor aloft. Green-stained entrails trailed from the perceptor. She gleefully poked at the organ with a knife. I was so disappointed that the feasters did most of my work for me, particularly Gildekaz. Oh, I would have loved slicing up that brute, but it just means that I'll have to take my time with you, VerDen. Come on out. I'll come out too. We can settle this one-on-one, I said. Do you think I'm an idiot? Myuln, tell this fool that I'll do nothing of the sort.
I poked my beam pistol over the wreckage and aimed at her. Purple collided with the weapon. The casing cracked. It fizzled violently. I chucked it as far away as I could. The beamer detonated in the air.
"None of that now, VerDen," said Donmer. "We haven't finished our conversation. Myuln agrees. How she adores you."
"You need help. Drop your beamer and come out. Nobody has to die. We'll take you back to Myuln. The doctors will know what to do," I said.
"Doctors," he says. "Doctors! How ridiculous, Myuln. The doctors put the thoughts in my head. The council loved the thoughts. Said I was their only hope. I don't need help. I need you to die." "Slowly," she responded.
"What does the council have to do with this?" I asked.
"Oh no, Myuln. I've said too much. No more talk. Time to kill."
I knew she was serious. I dove out of cover and fired. My beam scorched Myuln's perceptor. Donmer's hand burst. She screamed. A retaliatory shot pulped my middle right foot. I fired again. The beam burned uselessly against metal. A concussion erupted from Donmer's left. She jumped. Dark green spurted from the side of her thorax. Several more tiny explosions rang out. She quaked as each invisible projectile pummeled her body. Vermin rushed Donmer. The Venegardis rammed something into her perceptor. A muffled burst penetrated the silence. Light illuminated the inner workings of the organ. Donmer fell backward onto her own abdomen. I nursed my severed foot. Vermin ran up to me and withdrew a roll of white material from its armor. It bandaged up my destroyed foot. I limped toward the lift. Vermin grabbed my lower arm and slung it over its shoulders. It was a pointless but appreciated gesture. I had 5 more legs to support me. I just wasn't used to carrying myself with a limb missing. "GildeMar, we killed Donmer. Let us in," I said.
"We? Is Myuln still alive?"
asked GildeMar. "No, Donmer slaughtered her, but I have the creature that killed the Texamorphs. Send the lift down."
"Indeed. Creature, you say? What does that mean? Is it safe?"
he asked. "Of course. Why would I knowingly bring danger on the ship?"
"Can you blame me? I thought Donmer was a sure bet and she turned out to be a killer. I hesitate to think how many of our team she slaughtered even before we left the atmosphere of Myuln."
The lift opened. I and Vermin stepped onto the platform. We entered the ship. GildeMar waited for us.
"What in Turkum is that thing?"
asked GildeMar. "Our savior," I replied.
"It's ugly as sin."
"So are you, but I still tolerate your presence."
"And it destroyed the Texamorphs?"
he asked.
"As far as I know, they're dead and he was the only thing living in this graveyard.
I found VerShyk. She was dead too. I want to know how, and this is the only creature that may have a clue. Problem is, it talks by sound."
"Truly, how bizarre."
"You have any idea how we can understand it?"
"Not a chance. I'm an engineer. I make machines, not miracles. If you had some kind of translation guide, maybe. But even then, it's a long shot, and it would take time. Language is complex, especially planet to planet. It may not be possible. Myuln might have been able to decipher some of it, but me? No."
"Come on, GildeMar. I thought you loved a challenge," I said.
"I love a challenge I can overcome. This is beyond. Alien language barrier? Give me a break. I'm at my wit's end just trying to figure out how to get this clunker off the ground.
Have you figured out how? I asked.
I think so. I closed the breaches. That should mitigate the power drain. We chose this shape for a reason. It's the best for entering and exiting atmosphere, and it travels well. A little more work and I should have her spaceworthy again. Your remodeling didn't help.
You mean my excision of the feasters? Need I remind you that your brother died in that cause?
No, you don't. Your pet can stay. I don't know where we'll go, but I'm sick of this cemetery. Let's get out of here. We'll have plenty of time to blunder over language barriers in space.
We're going back to Myuln. I have a lot of questions for the Council.
Questions? They want us dead. We'd be better off finding a habitable planet on the way and living out our lives in peace, cried GildeMar.
I have a trump card. We did what we came for. The Texamorph threat is over. But I have vermin.
That thing? You named it?
I didn't name it. VerShyk did. She kind of adopted it.
By Turcum's name, you're not going to rest until you can understand it, are you?
Probably not, but we can deal with that later. Just get us off this accursed planet.
Can do,
replied GildeMar. I led Vermin to one of the quarters. It settled in and collapsed on the mattress. Vermin pulled out a little sliver of charred metal and stared blankly. I left it to relax and went to the log room. It sounded silent without Myuln constantly interacting with the consoles. I shoved VerShyk's ring into one of them. I was met with a final log.
This is it. I fought to the bitter end. The Magna Tormenta and the Locus Concutari did me in. Vermin killed them. I know he can destroy the Collegio. I find comfort in this knowledge. I consider him my son now. We never had the chance for a family, so this is my son. I know what needs to be done. My scanner has gathered all the data required. Give Vermin the life he deserves. It's my time. I can feel the virus converting my flesh into fluid for the Texamorph. I want to die. Don't hold it against him. This is my last wish.
I sobbed at this revelation. I knew it was meant for me, even though she didn't say my name. I scrolled through her data. In it was a full anatomical model of the Venegartis and schematics for our communication device. I rushed to find GildeMar.
What do you want, VerDen? This is a delicate procedure, said GildeMar as he welded together a section of hull plating.
I showed him the blueprints. Can you build this?
Of course.
This device will allow Vermin to speak. Teach me how to pilot the ship. You have work to do, I said.
You still think we should go back to Myuln?
Yeah, I have a score to settle with the Council, and Vermin is going to help me. This has been What Remains on the Planet of Graves, written and recorded by Curtiss Christensen for AudioStories.com. Thanks for listening.